"I don't need your discount," the boy said, pushing coins across the diner counter. "It's Wednesday," Sarah replied, meeting his suspicious gaze. "Student special." Between them lay the unspoken truth, his hollow cheeks, her deliberate kindness. For weeks, Sarah maintained their delicate dance, noticing his worsening cough as winter descended. Each Wednesday she invented new specials, wondering about the bruises beneath his sleeves. When he collapsed during a snowstorm, the fragile pretense shattered. She risked everything, her job, her carefully guarded solitude, to protect him. Neither could have imagined the three-star general whose arrival would transform their lives and reveal the true value of quiet compassion. The lunch rush at Sunrise Diner had dwindled to a handful of regulars when Sarah Matthews noticed him again. The thin boy with watchful eyes who always sat at the corner booth by the window. He was here, like clockwork, every Wednesday at 2:30 p.m., after the crowd thinned but before the dinner prep began. Sarah pretended to wipe down a nearby table as she observed him emptying his pockets, carefully arranging coins in small stacks on the laminated menu. Today the count seemed to be coming up short. The boy's shoulders slumped slightly as he redid his calculations, moving the coins around as if hoping for a different result. His finger traced down the menu prices, stopping at the cheapest item, toast and eggs, $4.99. The coins didn't quite make a sufficient pile. "Ready to order, hun?" Sarah approached with coffee pot in hand, her voice casual as if she hadn't noticed his dilemma. "I'm still deciding," he said, voice soft but clear. No typical teenage mumble. "Maybe just a water for now." Sarah nodded, pouring him a glass of water. "Take your time. Wednesday's discount day for students anyway." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Discount?" 20% off any breakfast item on Wednesdays, Sarah improvised. Owner's way of supporting local education. "You're in school, right?" A hesitation. "Yeah, Lincoln High." Sarah knew Lincoln High had closed for renovations 3 months ago. The students had all transferred to Westfield. But she just smiled. "Great. So that brings the toast and eggs down to about $4 even." She watched relief cross his face, quickly masked by casual nonchalance. "I guess I'll have that then." "Coming right up," Sarah said, collecting the carefully stacked coins. As she walked back to the kitchen, she slipped $2 from her tip jar into the register to cover the difference. From the grill, Marge eyed her suspiciously. "We don't have a student discount on Wednesdays." "We do for him," Sarah said quietly, clipping the order to the kitchen carousel. Through the service window, she watched the boy staring out at the autumn leaves skittering across the parking lot, his reflection in the window looking far too old for his young face. It was the 4th Wednesday she'd done this, and something told her it wouldn't be the last. Every Wednesday became a subtle dance between them. Sarah made sure she was always the one to serve the corner booth at 2:30, and the boy, who she eventually learned was named Ethan, gradually relaxed enough to accept her fabricated discounts without too much suspicion. "You know," Marge said one morning as they prepped for opening, "that kid of yours is looking rougher each week." Sarah glanced up from folding napkins. "He's not my kid." "Well, he's somebody's," Marge huffed, wiping down the grill with practiced strokes. "Question is, whose? And why isn't he in school on Wednesdays?" Sarah had wondered the same thing. Despite his efforts to appear put together, she'd noticed the same jeans appearing week after week, the backpack that seemed to contain everything he owned, and lately, a persistent cough that concerned her. "Maybe we should call someone," Marge suggested. "Social services or—" "No," Sarah said too quickly. She'd seen the fear in Ethan's eyes when a police officer had come in for coffee last week, the way he'd hunched over his plate and angled his face away. "Let me try talking to him first." That Wednesday, when Ethan arrived, Sarah noticed he was shivering slightly despite the mild October day. She brought him hot chocolate instead of water. On the house, new promotion. And set it down with a sandwich that was significantly larger than what he'd ordered. Kitchen made a mistake, she explained before he could question it. This was supposed to be for a to-go order, but they made it on the wrong bread. Would be a shame to waste it. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes both wary and weighing. Why are you being nice to me? The directness caught Sarah off guard. I'm nice to all my customers. Not like this, he said quietly. Sarah slid into the booth across from him, keeping her voice casual. When I was 16, I spent 3 months sleeping in my car. A waitress at a truck stop used to let me use their bathroom to wash up before school. Never made a big deal about it. Just left the door unlocked before her shift. She shrugged. Sometimes people just help people. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Recognition, perhaps. The shared language of those who've learned to survive. I'm not 16, he said finally. I'm 15. And you're not in school because... His hands tightened around the mug. It's complicated. Usually is. Sarah stood, straightening her apron. Sandwich comes with chips, by the way. Another special promotion. Later, as Sarah wiped down tables after closing, she found a napkin under Ethan's plate with cramped handwriting. Thanks. Not just for the food. She tucked it into her pocket, trying to ignore the growing knot of worry. October was ending, and with it, the merciful fall temperatures. Where was he sleeping? And what would happen when winter really hit? That night in her small apartment, Sarah searched online. How to help homeless teen without authorities, then hesitated before adding, safely. November brought unseasonable cold and the first snowfall of the year. Sarah found herself scanning the streets on her way to work, looking for Ethan's familiar silhouette. When Wednesday came with no sign of him at the usual time, she felt a growing unease that lasted through her shift. At 6, just as she was hanging up her apron, the bell above the door chimed. Ethan stood in the entrance, snow melting on his shoulders, his face flushed with cold. His cough had worsened, she noted immediately. Kitchen's closed, Marge called from the back. It's fine, Sarah countered. I can handle it. She led Ethan to his usual corner booth, now bathed in early evening darkness, as the winter sun had already set. Under the fluorescent lights, she could see what she'd missed before. A fading bruise near his temple, partially hidden by his overgrown hair. What happened? She asked, setting down a mug of hot chocolate without pretense. Nothing, he mumbled, then seemed to reconsider. Just some guys who didn't want to share their space under the bridge. Sarah felt her throat tighten. The railroad bridge? Ethan, you can't stay there. It's going to be 15 degrees tonight. He shrugged, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as his default response to things he couldn't control. I've got a sleeping bag. It's rated for cold. It's not rated for this cold, she said firmly. Look, there's a shelter on Maple that... No shelters, he cut her off, suddenly alert. They ask too many questions. Call social services. Sarah hesitated, then decided to push. Are you running from something? Someone? Ethan's eyes darted to the door, then back. My foster father, he admitted finally. He's got friends in the system. They'd just send me back to him. Was he the one who... Sarah gestured to the bruise. Ethan's silence was answer enough. My dad's overseas, he added after a moment, staring into his mug. Military. He doesn't know what happened after he deployed. My mom just left one day. Said she couldn't handle being a military wife anymore. The system placed me with her cousin. His voice hardened. He likes the support checks more than he likes having me around. The pieces clicked into place. Have you tried contacting your father? His unit is on communications blackout. Special operation. Ethan took a sip of chocolate, leaving a smudge on his upper lip that made him look suddenly, heartbreakingly young. I just need to make it until he gets back. I'm doing okay." The cough that followed belied his words. "Finish that," Sarah said, standing abruptly. "I'm going to grab you something to eat." In the kitchen, she found Marge already packaging a large container of soup. "Take these too," Marge said gruffly, adding a stack of dinner rolls. "Boy's too skinny by half." Sarah hesitated. "Marge, I think I need to do something more." "He's staying under the railroad bridge." Marge's expression darkened. "That explains the bruise. Those men under there aren't exactly the nurturing type." She sighed. "What are you thinking?" Before Sarah could answer, they heard the bell above the door chime again. She returned to the dining room to find Ethan gone, the hot chocolate half finished, still steaming on the table. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of his backpack disappearing into the swirling snow. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. Every howl of wind against her windows made her think of Ethan, huddled somewhere in the darkness. By morning, 8 inches of snow blanketed the town, and temperatures had plummeted further. Schools announced closures. The diner would remain open. Sunrise always did. Pride of place as the only establishment in town that never shut down for weather. As Sarah trudged through unplowed sidewalks, she made a decision. If Ethan came back, she would push harder. Offer her couch, maybe. The spare key she kept hidden under the flower pot. Something. The morning rush was non-existent due to the storm. By noon, the diner held only Jake Martinez, the police officer who treated Sunrise as his second office, and Marge, who was stress-baking enough pies to feed the entire town. "Heard about a disturbance down by the railroad bridge last night," Jake mentioned casually, watching Sarah refill his coffee. "Bunch of homeless guys got into it with someone. Kid, from the sounds of it." Sarah's hand jerked, coffee splashing onto the counter. "Was anyone hurt?" Jake raised an eyebrow at her reaction. "Nothing serious, according to dispatch. By the time a patrol got there, everyone had cleared out." He studied her face. "You know something about this, Sarah?" Before she could answer, the door burst open, bringing a flurry of snow and a frantic Ethan. His left arm was cradled against his chest, his face ashen beneath wind-chapped cheeks. "Sarah!" was all he managed before his knees buckled. Jake was on his feet instantly, catching the boy before he hit the floor. Sarah rushed to help, guiding them to a booth, while Marge appeared with a first aid kit. "Don't call anyone," Ethan pleaded through chattering teeth, eyes fixed on Jake's uniform. "Please, let me see your arm first," Jake said, his tone professional but gentle. "Then we'll talk about what happens next." Reluctantly, Ethan extended his arm. Even through his thin jacket, the unnatural angle was apparent. "That's broken, son," Jake said quietly. "I can't go to a hospital," Ethan whispered. "They'll call my foster father. He broke off, swallowing hard. Jake and Sarah exchanged looks over the boy's head. "I have a friend," Jake said slowly. "Army medic. Retired now. Makes house calls for people who prefer discretion." He rested a hand lightly on Ethan's shoulder. "But I need the whole story. No more running." Ethan looked between the 3 adults surrounding him, Sarah's concern, Jake's steady assessment, Marge's grim determination, and something in him seemed to surrender. "My real name is Ethan Reynolds," he began, voice cracking. "My father is General David Reynolds." "General Reynolds?" Jake straightened, recognition flashing across his face. "3-star general? Special Operations Command?" Ethan nodded weakly. "You know him?" "I served under him briefly, before I joined the police." Jake's demeanor shifted subtly, more alert, almost reverent. "One of the finest officers in the military." Sarah moved closer to Ethan, protective instinct flaring. "That doesn't change our immediate problem. He needs medical attention." "And you'll get it," Jake assured them, already pulling out his phone. "Doc Wilson can be here in 20 minutes. Meanwhile," he turned back to Ethan, I need to understand how the son of General Reynolds ended up homeless in our town. While Marge cleared the diner, hanging a closed for weather sign on the door, Ethan revealed his story in halting sentences. His mother abandoning him shortly after his father's deployment. Being placed with her cousin, Frank, who collected the military dependent support payments while barely providing food or shelter. The escalating abuse. I reported him twice, Ethan explained, wincing as Sarah gently applied a cold compress to his arm. But he has friends in family services. They always took his side. His voice hardened. The last time I tried, he locked me in the basement for 2 days. After that, I ran. Jake's expression had darkened progressively throughout the account. We need to contact your father. His unit is on communications blackout, Ethan repeated. I tried everything. There are channels, Jake said firmly. Military emergency protocols. A situation like this qualifies. A knock interrupted them as an elderly man with military posture entered, carrying a worn medical bag. This the patient? Doc Wilson asked, eyes immediately assessing Ethan's condition. Let's have a look, son. While the doctor tended to Ethan, Jake stepped outside to make calls. Sarah remained by the boy's side, holding his good hand through the painful setting of his broken arm. Hairline fracture, Doc Wilson pronounced eventually. Not displaced, thankfully. He needs rest, proper nutrition, and follow-up care. He glanced at Sarah. Can you provide that? Before she could answer, Ethan spoke up. She's been helping me for months. She's the only one who has. The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, responsibility solidifying into resolve. He can stay with me, she said, until we reach his father. Jake returned, pocketing his phone with an expression Sarah couldn't read. That might be sooner than you think. I've initiated the protocols. Now we wait. Ethan slept on Sarah's couch that night, his splinted arm propped on pillows, fever fluctuating from the combination of injury and exposure. Sarah called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, spending the day alternating between tending to him and jumping at every ring of her phone. By evening, his fever broke, but Jake's promised military contact remained silent. Doubt crept in, as Sarah prepared soup in her tiny kitchen. What if they don't believe us? Ethan asked from the couch, voice raspy from sleep. Or what if Dad's... He couldn't finish the sentence. Jake knows what he's doing, Sarah assured him, though her own uncertainty gnawed at her. The military was a labyrinth of protocols and chain of command, especially during classified operations. A sharp knock at the door startled them both. Sarah peered through the peephole to find a woman in a crisp pantsuit, her expression severe. Ms. Matthews, I'm Carol Adams, County Social Services. She held up an ID badge. I need to speak with you regarding a minor reportedly staying at this residence. Sarah's blood ran cold. She opened the door just enough to block the view inside. How did you... We received an anonymous report, Carol interrupted. A concerned citizen mentioned you might be harboring a runaway. From the hallway behind Carol, Marge appeared, still wearing her cooking apron. I heard voices, she said, feigning surprise. Everything okay, Sarah? Carol turned, momentarily distracted, and Sarah caught Marge's quick wink. Ms. Adams is from Social Services, Sarah explained, understanding instantly. Marge was creating a diversion. She's received a report about... Oh, you must mean about Sarah's nephew? Marge interjected smoothly. Poor boy broke his arm in the snow yesterday. His mother, Sarah's sister, is deployed overseas. Military family. Carol's expression remained skeptical. I have no record of... Bureaucracy, Marge sighed dramatically. Always 10 steps behind. Come down to the diner, dear. I've got fresh pie, and we can sort this all out while Sarah tends to the boy. Doctor's orders. Complete rest. Before Carol could protest, Marge had ushered her back toward the stairs, chattering about her own nephew in the Marines. Sarah closed the door, heart pounding. That was close. Too close, Ethan agreed, now fully alert. Frank must have tracked me somehow. He won't stop, Sarah. Not when there's money involved. The realization settled heavily between them. They were now racing against two clocks, reaching General Reynolds before Frank leveraged his connections to reclaim Ethan, and keeping Ethan safe in the interim. "We need a better plan," Sarah murmured, mind already racing with possibilities and risks. By morning, Jake had news. Military channels were activated, but the process was complicated by the classified nature of the general's mission. Meanwhile, Carol Adams had not been deterred by Marge's intervention. She'd scheduled an official home visit for the following day. "We're out of time," Jake admitted grimly, as they gathered in Sarah's apartment. "If Carol comes with the proper paperwork and Ethan's here, she'll send me back to Frank," Ethan finished, the fear in his voice palpable. Sarah paced the small living room. What if we told her the truth? Showed her Ethan's injuries, explained the situation? Jake shook his head. Without proof of the general's paternity or documentation of the abuse, it's just Ethan's word against an established foster parent. The system's designed to keep kids in placement, not remove them. "So we're back to running," Ethan said quietly. The words struck Sarah like a physical blow. She'd spent her life running, from her own broken home, from relationships, from putting down roots. Always easier to move on than to fight. But looking at Ethan now, something fierce and protective rose within her. "No more running," she said firmly. "Not for either of us." A plan formed, tenuous but possible. Jake would expedite the military communication channels, while Sarah took Ethan to Doc Wilson for proper medical documentation of his injuries. Evidence that couldn't be ignored. Marge would stall Carol if she showed up early. "It's risky," Jake warned. "If it goes sideways, you could face charges for harboring a runaway." The weight of this settled on Sarah's shoulders. Her job, her freedom, all on the line for a boy she'd known for only months. "He's worth it," she said simply. Later, as they waited in Doc Wilson's makeshift clinic, Ethan broke the tense silence. "Why are you doing all this for me?" he asked. "You barely know me." Sarah considered the question carefully. "Because 15 years ago, I was you, except no one fought for me." She met his eyes steadily. "Someone should have. And if my dad never comes back? If this doesn't work?" The question hung between them, the fear neither had voiced aloud until now. "Then we'll figure it out," Sarah promised. "Together." Something shifted in Ethan's expression, a fragile hope taking root. "I never thanked you properly. For the discounts. I knew they weren't real, you know. Not after the second time." Sarah smiled. "I figured as much. You're too smart not to notice. But I kept coming anyway," he admitted softly. It wasn't just for the food. The confession brought unexpected tears to Sarah's eyes. In trying to help him survive, she hadn't realized she was giving him something else he'd been starving for. Someone who cared enough to notice. Doc Wilson's medical report was thorough and damning, not just documenting Ethan's broken arm, but cataloging old injuries, poorly healed ribs, a shoulder that had been dislocated and reset without proper medical care, scarring consistent with defensive wounds. The doctor's clinical language couldn't disguise his outrage. "This should be enough to trigger an investigation," Jake assured them, carefully placing the sealed medical documents in an official envelope. "I've called in some favors at the county level. We've got a judge willing to issue an emergency protection order." Their cautious optimism lasted exactly 2 hours. Sarah was making lunch when heavy pounding on her apartment door sent Ethan retreating to the bathroom, eyes wide with panic. Through the peephole she saw a tall, heavy-set man with thinning hair and a county sheriff's deputy behind him. "Ms. Matthews, Frank Delaney. I'm here for my foster son, Ethan." His voice carried artificial concern. "We've been so worried about him." Sarah's hands trembled as she cracked the door, chains still in place. There must be some mistake. Frank's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No mistake. I have temporary custody papers. Ethan's been struggling with mental health issues, making up stories, running away." He gestured to the deputy. "Officer Green understands the situation." The deputy nodded, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "Ma'am, if the minor is here, you're legally obligated to release him to his guardian." Sarah felt ice spreading through her veins. "I need to see those papers." Frank thrust documents through the gap, official-looking forms with county seals and signatures, including Carol Adams. "The system works quickly when it needs to," Frank said with smug satisfaction. "Now, please step aside." A text vibrated her phone. "Jake, stall them. Judge Wilson signing order. Now. 10 minutes max." Sarah straightened, channeling every ounce of righteous anger. "Officer, I'd like to report suspected child abuse. I have medical documentation of injuries inflicted on Ethan while in Mr. Delaney's care." Frank's expression darkened. "These are lies. Ethan has been self-harming for attention. It's documented in his file." "Then you won't mind waiting while I present this evidence to the deputy?" Sarah countered, holding up Doc Wilson's sealed envelope. "Or shall we all go down to the station together? I'm sure the local news would be interested in how a child in the system sustained multiple documented injuries." The deputy shifted uncomfortably. Frank's facade cracked slightly, revealing a flash of something ugly beneath. "Officer, this woman is obstructing a lawful custody order," he insisted, voice rising. "Break down the door if necessary." From inside the bathroom, unseen by the men at the door, Ethan listened, trembling, caught between the instinct to flee and the desperate hope that, for once, someone might actually protect him. The standoff at Sarah's door stretched into its 8th minute, Frank's demands growing louder, the deputy increasingly uncertain, Sarah standing her ground with a calm she didn't feel. Her phone remained silent. Where was Jake? "Last chance," Frank snarled, patience evaporating. "Either Ethan comes with me now, or I'll have you arrested for kidnapping." The bathroom door opened. Ethan emerged, chin lifted despite his pallor. "I'll go," he said quietly. "Ethan, no," Sarah began. "It's okay." His eyes conveyed a message Sarah couldn't decipher. "I'm tired of running. Tired of people getting hurt because of me." Frank's triumphant smile made Sarah's stomach turn. As the deputy moved to remove the chain, the building's front door crashed open downstairs. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairwell. Jake appeared, breathless, flanked by 2 uniformed state police officers and Carol Adams, whose expression had transformed from bureaucratic detachment to fierce determination. "Frank Delaney," Jake announced, "these officers have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, child endangerment, and falsifying county documents." Frank lunged for Ethan, but the deputy, now understanding the situation, blocked his path. "You forged my signature," Carol said, voice shaking with anger, as she held up the custody papers, "and manipulated case files. Did you really think I wouldn't check when Officer Martinez contacted me?" The revelation stunned Sarah. "You called her?" Jake nodded. "Last night. Turns out Ms. Adams has been trying to build a case against Frank for months. She suspected something was wrong with Ethan's file, but couldn't prove it. 3 other foster children have passed through his care," Carol added grimly, "all with suspicious injuries, all cases mysteriously closed when I flagged them for review." As the state officers handcuffed a protesting Frank, Ethan moved to Sarah's side, their shoulders touching, the simple contact a lifeline for them both. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding yesterday," Carol told Sarah quietly. "When Officer Martinez explained the situation, well, Let's just say we've been working through the night to make this happen." Later, after statements were given and Frank was transported to County Holding, Jake pulled Sarah and Ethan aside. "I just got word," he said, barely containing his excitement. "General Reynolds has been reached. His unit is being extracted specifically to address this situation." The news landed like a thunderclap. Ethan's face transformed, hope and fear in equal measure. "When?" he whispered. 24 hours, give or take." Jake squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "He's coming, son." For the first time since meeting him, Sarah saw Ethan's eyes fill with tears, not of pain or fear, but of a cautious, fragile joy. Word spread quickly through the small town. By morning, Sunrise Diner buzzed with speculation and support. Regulars dropped off clothes for Ethan, home-cooked meals for Sarah's freezer, and solemn promises to testify if needed against Frank. "Never liked that man," Marge declared as she wiped down the counter. "Always ordered the cheapest thing and never tipped." Sarah laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. For months, she'd carried the weight of Ethan's secret alone. Now, seeing the community rally around him, she felt something long dormant stir within her. Belonging. Ethan sat at his usual booth, uncomfortable with the attention, but visibly moved by it. His shoulders had gradually loosened, his watchfulness softening around the edges. "Is it always like this here?" he asked, as another customer dropped off a hand-knitted scarf. "Small towns," Sarah explained. "They gossip like crazy, but when it matters, they show up." The diner's door opened, admitting Jake with Carol Adams. Their expressions set alarm bells ringing in Sarah's mind. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. Jake glanced around the crowded diner. "Maybe we should talk privately." In the back office, he delivered the news. A complication with General Reynolds's extraction. Weather conditions, operational security, the details were vague, but the implications clear. "They're delayed?" Ethan asked, voice small. "At least 72 hours, Jake confirmed. "Maybe longer." "The problem," Carol interjected gently, "is that without a blood relative to take custody, the system requires Ethan be placed in temporary foster care during the investigation." The words hit like a physical blow. "After everything, you still want to put him back in the system?" Sarah demanded. "I don't want to," Carol said, frustration evident. "But I'm bound by regulations. Unless—" She hesitated, glancing between Sarah and Ethan. "There is an alternative. Emergency temporary guardianship." Sarah stared at her. "You mean—" "It's unusual," Carol acknowledged. "You'd need to file paperwork immediately, pass an expedited background check, home inspection." "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." "Wait," Ethan interrupted, turning to Sarah with an intensity that stopped her cold. "You need to understand what you're offering. This isn't just another discount. This is your life. You'd be legally responsible for me." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I know exactly what I'm offering, Ethan." "But my father, when he comes—" "We'll find you safe and cared for," Sarah finished gently. "That's all that matters right now." Ethan swallowed hard, years of disappointment warring with desperate hope. Finally, he nodded. A decision made. "Okay." The simple acceptance carried the weight of worlds. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of paperwork, interviews, and preparations. Sarah's apartment, long maintained as a temporary space she could abandon at a moment's notice, was transformed. The spare room that had functioned as storage became Ethan's, complete with a proper bed donated by Jake's sister and bookshelves assembled late into the night. "You don't have to do all this," Ethan protested, as Sarah hung curtains that actually matched the bedspread. "It's just temporary." Sarah paused, brush in hand. "Nothing about this feels temporary to me." The admission surprised them both. An understanding passed between them. Whatever happened next, Something permanent had already taken root. The emergency guardianship was approved provisionally, dependent on the general's endorsement upon arrival. Carol had pushed it through with remarkable efficiency, battling bureaucracy with the tenacity of someone making amends for past oversights. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week since Ethan had collapsed in the diner, Jake called with the news they'd been waiting for. The general's transport touched down at Fort Carson an hour ago. Military escort is bringing him directly here. ETA 3 hours. Sarah felt Ethan freeze beside her. He's really coming? He is, Jake confirmed. And Sarah? He's bringing half the Pentagon with him, from the sounds of it. After hanging up, Sarah found Ethan staring out the window, his expression unreadable. Nervous? She asked gently. What if he's disappointed in me? The question emerged barely above a whisper. For running away. For not finding a better solution. Sarah turned him to face her. Ethan, you survived. You kept yourself safe in an impossible situation. That's not disappointing. That's extraordinary. He nodded, unconvinced. At the diner, Marge had gone into overdrive, ordering a special cleaning crew, preparing the general's favorite foods, Jake had made discreet inquiries, and closing to the public for the afternoon. Military brass deserves privacy, she declared, though Sarah suspected she simply wanted to witness the reunion personally. By 2 o'clock, the diner sparkled. Sarah wore her nicest blouse. Ethan, in new clothes that finally fit properly, couldn't stop fidgeting with his splint. What do I even say to him? He asked as they waited, the minute hand on the diner's clock moving with excruciating slowness. After everything? You don't have to say anything, Sarah assured him. Just be there. A convoy of black SUVs appeared at the end of the street, moving with purposeful speed. Ethan stood, breath catching. Sarah reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. Whatever happens next, she promised. You're not alone anymore. The convoy halted with military precision outside Sunrise Diner. Men in dark suits emerged first, scanning the area with practiced efficiency before nodding to the central vehicle. A uniformed driver opened the rear door. General David Reynolds stepped out. Even in Sarah's limited military knowledge, his presence commanded respect. Tall, straight-backed, his uniform adorned with decorations that spoke of valor and service. But it was his face that seized her attention, the same jawline as Ethan, the same blue eyes, now scanning the diner with barely contained urgency. Beside her, Ethan had gone completely still, as if movement might shatter the moment into another disappointment. The bell above the door chimed as the general entered, flanked by aides who quickly stepped aside. For a heartbeat, the diner was suspended in perfect silence. Then, Dad? The single word broke something in the general's composed facade. Ethan. They moved simultaneously, Ethan's cautious steps accelerating as his father opened his arms. The collision was gentle, mindful of Ethan's injury, but the embrace was fierce, the general's larger frame seeming to envelop his son completely. I'm sorry, Ethan was saying, words muffled against his father's uniform. I tried to find you. I tried— No, son, the general interrupted, voice thick with emotion. I'm the one who's sorry. I should never have left you with her. I should have known. The reunion continued in hushed exchanges, foreheads pressed together, the general's hands gripping Ethan's shoulders as if afraid he might disappear. The military personnel and diner staff alike averted their eyes from the raw emotion, finding sudden interest in ceiling tiles and floor patterns. Sarah moved to give them privacy, but the general looked up, holding her in place with a gaze that carried the weight of command. You must be Sarah Matthews. She nodded, suddenly tongue-tied. Officer Martinez briefed me during transport, he continued, one arm still around Ethan's shoulders. You fed my son when he was hungry, sheltered him when he was in danger, fought for him when the system failed. His voice, accustomed to battlefield authority, wavered slightly. "How do I even begin to thank you?" Before Sarah could answer, Ethan spoke up. "She did it all through fake discounts, Dad. Never made me feel like charity." Something in the general's expression shifted. Recognition of the profound dignity in such a simple act. "Ms. Matthews," he said formally, "I understand there is a medal for civilian service to military families. I've never had occasion to present one before today." He extended his hand. "It would be my honor if you would accept it." Sarah took his offered hand, her own trembling slightly. "The honor was mine, sir." Around them, the diner erupted in applause. 6 months later, Sunrise Diner hosted a private gathering. The official plaque, dedicating the Sarah Matthews Foundation for Youth Support, gleamed on the wall beside the register, its polished surface catching the late afternoon sunlight. Sarah, wearing the Civilian Service Medal pinned to her blouse, moved among guests with newfound confidence. The foundation, established with General Reynolds's personal funds and now supported by Department of Defense grants, had already helped 23 at-risk teens in the county, providing emergency housing, legal advocacy, and mentorship. "Never thought I'd see you running an organization instead of coffee," Marge commented, passing her a plate of hors d'oeuvres. "Suits you, though." Sarah smiled. "I still pick up shifts here. Some habits are hard to break." Across the room, Ethan stood with his father, both in civilian clothes now, Ethan's arm fully healed, the general temporarily stationed at Fort Carson to be near his son. Their resemblance had grown more pronounced as Ethan gained weight and confidence, though he still occasionally glanced down at his plate with the instinctive calculation of someone who had known hunger. "Ms. Matthews," the general approached, extending a small gift bag. Ethan insisted this couldn't wait until the official ceremony. Sarah accepted it curiously. Inside lay a custom-made Waitress name tag, inscribed with her name and beneath it, in smaller letters, "Discount Specialist." Laughter bubbled up, unexpected and free. "I'll wear it on my shifts." "About that," the general said, his tone shifting to something more formal. "The Pentagon has expressed interest in expanding the foundation model to military communities nationwide. They'd need a director who understands the program from the ground up." Sarah blinked. "Are you offering me a job?" "With relocation to Colorado," he confirmed, "where Ethan and I will be based for the foreseeable future." Before she could process the implications, Ethan joined them. "Say yes," he urged. "You can't stay in that apartment forever. And I still owe you for about 27 discounted meals." Sarah looked between them, the boy who had counted coins in her diner, and the father who had crossed war zones to find him. Then, around the room, at the community that had come together to protect one of their own. For someone who had spent a lifetime ready to run, the concept of purposefully putting down roots was terrifying. And yet, "I'll need to give Marge 2 weeks' notice," she said finally. Ethan's face split into a grin. The general's more restrained smile held equal warmth. Later, as guests began to depart, Sarah found herself alone at the corner booth. Ethan's spot. She ran her fingers over the worn laminate, remembering the careful stacks of coins, the desperate mathematics of survival. Some journeys began with a single step. This one had started with a simple fiction. A discount that wasn't real, offered by a waitress to a boy who needed more than just a meal. Sometimes, Sarah reflected, the most important things in life came disguised as the smallest gestures, tiny ripples that, given time and nurturing, could change everything.